Hey, I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com, and today we're going to show you what we do when we service the front brake pads on one of the race bikes before we head to the track. Okay, so we've got Max Van's Ninja 400 here. We're heading to Grattan Raceway with Weir. It's our home track. We were there a few weeks back, I think about 3 weeks now, and Max did pretty well in this, man. He did a 28.6 on the Ninja 400, which if you've ever ridden Grattan, that's pretty fucking fast right there. Getting it ready for the race weekend, the pads that we have on there now, they have been on there for a long time. I don't put new pads on the bike all the time for him because I feel like he needs to go out there and, ride with equipment that's good, but the brakes don't need to be perfect every single race. When we go to the Moto America stuff, will he be getting new pads? Yeah, he's going to get new pads a lot more frequently. But for track days and some of the club racing stuff, I just really don't think it's necessary. We have hit a point now where it is time to change them. Got a new set of Vesrah ZZ pads. These are great on these small bikes. That's what we're running on the Ninja and the R3. And we're going to replace the brake fluid, of course, with some Motul RBF 600. So in this video, what we're going to do is just kind of take you through the process here, right, and show you what we've done on our bike. You have to, per the Weir rules, you have to have some type of safety wire. You have to secure these brake pad pins. They allow you to do it with some silicone, right? If you don't want to drill it. So I haven't drilled these. You can see that silicone definitely stays in there and helps hold everything together nicely. So we need to get in here and dig that out. Got a little flat bladed screwdriver here. This is the part that's kind of like watching paint dry. If I was really thinking, I'd like prepare jokes for this part of the video, right? Hey, some funny shit to say, but I didn't do that, so we're just gonna have to suffer through this. Hey, guess what? Those weren't loose. Okay. Now, something else we're gonna do, and this is probably the important part. You want to inspect the caliper, you want to clean the piston, all that good stuff before, you just push the piston back in the bore, okay? What you don't want to do is you don't want to push that piston back in the bore when it's just filthy, okay? And you have all that debris, and, I'm sure you've seen before too, a lot of times that stuff is really just caked on the caliper. Let's get the safety wire cut off here. That stuff is just literally caked on the caliper. So we want to make sure we get that all cut off or cleaned off nicely. Kind of loosening that up just a little bit so I can do it a little easier when I have it just in my hand. We're going to start our weekend off with the tires that are on this. I think he's got 3 sessions on these, so there's definitely plenty of tire left. So one of the first things we want to do, and you can see they're worn a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at the new set to give you an idea. This is going to be a pretty significant improvement for him, and he's lucky that I'm such a nice dad, and I'm going to put new pads on his bike. A couple weeks ago, one of his buddy's dads, Joe Lamandry, hey Joe, his dad ordered like 5 sets of brake pads, and he'd already ordered a bunch of pads for Joe earlier in the year, and I saw the order come through, and I emailed his dad, and I said, dude, you don't know, but Max is lucky if he gets like 2 new sets a year, tops. So here is what they look like when they're brand new. Here is what Max Van's pads look like. In all fairness, I probably replaced these a while ago, right? But I didn't. One of the things I want to look for in the pads, and it'll be easier to see when I have them off, is have they worn evenly? You know, that's going to give you an idea. Is the hardware sliding smoothly? You know, is anything binding up? You know, I've heard some reports on these 400s of some wear maybe inside the bore, the caliper on that pin. And you'll know if it's not sliding correctly, right? If it's binding up, if you are seeing, you know, wear that's uneven on those pads. It's kind of a telltale sign. We got our money's worth out of that one, I would say. Hey, Dad, the bike stops a whole lot better. I know, buddy, you're welcome. Yeah, we're going to clean up and lubricate the hardware again. But all in all, that still looks really even. Okay. So, go ahead and pull that bracket off. We're going to clean this off, right, and re-lubricate. See, the pistons are relatively clean because every time, you know, I'm servicing it, and this is not Windex, FYI. This is has got Formula 409 in it. If you were Greek, you would probably use Windex for everything. I'm not. Just going to take some time, just kind of clean the whole caliper. But the biggest thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is that you're getting the pistons really clean. We're going to use the speed bleeder bag and hose kit that I use when I bleed the brakes manual, and push the fluid in. So we're going to compress the piston by hand. This is just water now to rinse it. Just a garden sprayer that I got from Home Depot. A little compressed air. Okay, everything's cleaned up and ready to go. Things that you want to pay attention to and look for. Like you can see just the beginnings of a witness mark there. That's where the brake pad's in contact with that. If you can, with your nail, feel a groove of any significance, and I can't, even though you can see this discoloration right now, I really can't feel it. There's nothing there to catch the pad, okay? Same thing on these pins, right? I clean these off. Not feeling anything there, so there's no grooves worn in it. But this is something now I'm going to kind of keep my eye on, because if you have a groove that wears into that, you know, that can then kind of catch the edge of the pad. If the pad wear and everything is just right, it's not going to prevent the brakes from being applied because there's tremendous power there, but it's going to change the feel and the overall power and even wear and all that stuff. So always look at your hardware. You can see I pulled out the rubber boots. I cleaned those out. I've cleaned the bore that it rides in here, right? The whole caliper's cleaned up. So the pistons are now ready to be pushed back in. So I have something to collect. We're going to end up replacing the fluid here ultimately too. What's going to happen as we go through the process. Right now, this is just about getting the pistons pushed back in. Both of the pistons went back super smooth. It's obviously something you want to pay attention to. Very easy to push them in. When the screw is open. So now we're ready to start prepping the caliper to get it all put back together. And this will, of course, we'll bleed the brakes, the whole line. Start by putting the hardware back in place. make sure you have that in there nice and even. Everything's debris free. Lubrication. All you need is just a thin layer too. This is an old Phillips screwdriver with the point ground off. Like so. If you put too much lube in there, what will happen is when you go to push this back, like you can see now I'm able to push this all the way back and it's not fighting me. You put too much lube in there, the lube doesn't compress, okay? And you have a boot here and a seal and it's kind of airtight. You know, you can actually put yourself in a position where that doesn't go back in far enough. And that is a problem, okay? Okay, I've got that side in. Now we're gonna go ahead and lubricate the other one. You can kind of see how I had that lube here on the tip. God, I just said all those words, didn't I? That's funny. Well, there you go. There's some jokes in the brake video now. You know, the most important part is to just have a nice thin film, as uniform as you can. Wipe off the excess. You want to make sure that you're not pinching the boot. Okay, now we'll put the pads in. Start off with the inboard pad. Hold that into position. Let's go ahead and get that pin. As that has to slide through, you have to put a little pressure up on the pad to make that happen. Repeat that down here. Now we've got our outboard pad. You always want to make sure that you have your friction material facing the rotor. I know that sounds stupid, but trust me when I tell you, I have seen that. I have actually seen that from some people who have been working on bikes for a long time. Mistakes get made. So double check, triple check. Just going to get these started now. Ultimately, I'm going to end up safety wiring these. We're going to do some Moto America stuff with Max later in the year, and then hopefully if he has fun and rides well the entire season next year. And we're going to change pads before they ever get anywhere near that. So yeah, I don't want to have to dig out all that silicone. But once again, for our purpose today, you know, we're just going to stick with the same method that we've been using because it's worked thus far. Okay, let's go ahead and bolt the caliper up. I had these safety wired and the safety wire faced, right? Faced each other. So retorquing this is really pretty simple. All we have to do is, I'm not going to use a torque wrench on this. I know some of you guys are like, no way. You look at this, you know, this is all about shear strength more than it's going to be anything. So just not necessary. And I know I am at the same, essentially, torque as we started off, because they're just facing each other, right? Like so. Okay, now come back to these. I want to make sure those pins are tight. We will re-silicone those before we head off to the track. When I come back, we're going to be bleeding the front brakes. Okay, so now I've got this wrapped up, a little silicone on there, everything's tight, got that safety wired. The pads are installed, caliper is clean. Now it's time to service the fluid, and this is without question, a really important step. Considering this is a race weekend and not a track day weekend, I want to start the kit off with a fresh bottle of fluid. Brake fluid will attract and retain moisture. You get moisture inside the fluid, it just does not work properly, right? It has an impact on the boiling point. When they get hot, you'll get some fade. So always best, if you can, to start off with a brand new jug of fluid. Sealed container. We're going to use Motul RBF 600. That's what we use in all of our bikes. Stuff is great. Let's get that master topped off. I already have the speed bleeder bag and hose kit attached, and we're going to start by opening the screw, squeezing the lever, holding the lever, closing the screw. And we're going to repeat this process. Get some fluid moving here. Pump it a few times too. The pistons were all the way in. What I found too with this bike is by turning the lever, or the bars, I'm sorry, all the way to the left, it kind of really levels that master cylinder off, and it just makes the bleeding process a whole bunch easier. Okay, so we bled brakes so many times, right? So Caleb's really going to show you hardly any of that. Everything's sealed up. Another key step is you want to make sure that you don't have the fluid in the master overfilled. There needs to be an air gap maintained in there. Okay, so as the fluid gets hot, right, and expands a little bit, there's somewhere for it to go. If you have it filled up all the way, so much so that when you put the reservoir cap on it, that it's just oozing fluid out, you're overfull. And you could get yourself into a situation where it might hold the brakes on, okay? The easiest way to avoid that is just to make sure the level is in an appropriate place. Bleeder screw is tight, everything's tight, safety wired. We've got our silicone back in there. We've got a really nice lever right now. It's really pretty firm already. Something that I like to do is I like to take and kind of pump it up and hold it. And then I'm going to take a cable tie. I'm going to let this bike sit overnight. If I don't have an opportunity to sit it overnight because we're working on the motorcycle on the same day that we're leaving for the track, then what we'll do is I will do the same thing after I've loaded the bike in the trailer, okay? And essentially all this is doing is it's going to hold the master cylinder in an applied position and allow gravity to be our friend and just take any possible air bubbles that could be in this system and allow them to work their way up right into that air gap that resides at the very top of the master cylinder and ensure you've got a good, complete bleed. Brand new pads, brand new fluid, everything's cleaned up and lubed up. This Ninja 400 is race ready as far as the front brakes are concerned. If you have any questions, leave those in the comment section of this video. I answer all that stuff myself. I'm here to help you all get the same result from your project we get from ours.